Hello, and thank you so much for joining me. My name is Paula Fellingham, and this video is on life lessons that I learned in the Kibera slums. This is in Nairobi, Kenya, Africa. I smelled the stench before I saw the slums. On an overcast day in August, I nervously walked down the hill of dried orange mud into Kenya's Kibera slums. My teenage son Benjamin walked beside me. On my other side was Adele Quinn, one of my African sisters and a mentor to the women in Kibera. Adele held my hand tightly. Sensing my concern, she whispered, "Don't be afraid, Paula. I'm with you. And Otto will protect us." As I glanced behind us to be sure our large bodyguard was still there, Otto smiled and nodded. His bright teeth contrasted starkly against his rugged black face. I was soon to learn life lessons that I will never, ever forget. You see, in the Kibera slums, 1 million people live in 1 square mile. It's the most dense slum in the world. And it is in this unlikely place that I fell in love. To say that my day in the Kibera slums was life-changing is understating it profoundly. Indeed, on that day in Africa, I felt as if my very cells were being rearranged, and I was awakening in new, wonderful ways. As the 4 of us turned a corner, the massive expanse of the slums came into view, and I gasped. It's a wide, deep gully with rows and rows and rows of corrugated tin huts that were badly put together many decades ago. Pieces of rusted tin, weathered wood slats, old dried mud produced makeshift homes for hundreds of thousands of people who had no other place to live. Slum dwellers used whatever materials they could to shelter their families from the intense African heat, the swirling orange dust of this region, and occasional rainstorms. These dwellings are crammed with crying babies, laughing children, fearful fathers, hard-working mothers, and youth who yearn to break free. They all yearn to break free. High on one ridge of the gulch, it sits an old white Christian church. And as we were entering the slums, a group of women way up that hill, they swayed together outside the church above us, passionately singing praises to Jesus. Their African voices rang out fervently. "Our Lord is good. Our Lord is great. Our Lord loves us. Yes, He does." I smiled as I embraced the moment. Although these are the poorest of the poor, the first sound we heard as we entered the slums was women rejoicing. They were praising God, raising their voices in joyful gratitude. My heart broke open, and love for those beautiful women poured out. It was a magical moment. The first entrepreneur we met in the slums was a middle-aged barber in a very tiny shop. As we stood in his barber shop, I thought, it never crossed my mind that all you really need to be a barber is 1 chair, 1 mirror, and 1 pair of scissors. That's all he used. The people I met in the slums live simple lives. There's a life lesson there, because more is not always better. It's just more. That memorable day was filled with reminders like that, and I relished each one. You see, decades ago, I learned that the best teachers are also the best students. They seek to learn life lessons every moment of every day, and I smiled as I left the barber shop, excited to experience more. I was shocked by what we saw next. We witnessed 2 women throwing buckets of trash and fecal matter into the dirty water that's their only water source. It is a stinking brownish-green, sluggish, moving body of filthy water that runs down the center of the slums. I realized in that moment that there's no sewer system there. No electrical system, just some wires strung haphazardly, a real safety threat. And no utility system. And I wondered what I would do with my dirty water if I lived in a similar situation. Of course, I would have no choice but to do the same thing that my Kibera sisters were doing. There was no judgment in my heart at all. There was only great love and great sadness. Observers quickly realized that there are no easy solutions to the problems in Kibera. As I contemplated the massive, complicated dilemma, I was filled with a profound yearning to help. In fact, numerous times during the day I fought the urge to cry, and my heart ached to lighten their loads. Gratefully, I knew that my son, Ben, was learning life lessons that day, which no American school teacher could possibly teach him. Like me, after being in Kibera, my son was never the same. It began to rain lightly then as we continued on. Knowing that they don't want their pictures taken, Ben kept his camera hidden in his sweatshirt and only quickly took it out to snap photos after asking permission. And Otto stood there watching while he did, protecting us. As we turned a corner in the massive maze of crude dwellings, we noticed a handsome young man carefully washing his shoes. I asked, "Why are you doing this?" He responded, "The orange clay of Kibera marks us and prevents us from getting jobs in Nairobi, so we wash off Kibera each day before work." And my heart ached again. Then we noticed a group of children gathered in front of something that looked like a big gate. As we came closer, we were surprised to discover that the children, they were intensely watching a single television that was placed behind a wall of bars in a room that was part of an old store. The children noticed us as we approached. Some smiled shyly, others asked for money, but most of them quickly turned back to their viewing and seemed mesmerized as they happily watched the well-protected one television set. One of the highlights of the day was when Adele guided us into the salon of a middle-aged, cheerful hairstylist. She only had 2 metal folding chairs, a brush, a hairdryer, and a hand mirror. As we entered her tiny place, about 6 feet by 8 feet, the 3 women inside were laughing. When they saw Adele, they squealed with delight and jumped up to hug her. Adele is beloved in the slums because she tirelessly helps those women improve their lives. She's like an angel to them. And to all of us who know her, she's like an angel too. Our time in that salon was memorable because of the women's light, happy hearts and their obvious friendships with each other. These women own very few earthly possessions, but they're wealthy within. Their wealth lies in their valuable resistance and inner strength. They know how to create their own joy, no matter what's happening around them. They laughed easily and they sang spontaneously. They love passionately and deeply. They serve naturally, and they appreciate every little act of kindness. And those women are filled with hope and a deep desire to improve their own lives and the lives of their children. Many wealthy women lack these priceless skills and could learn so much from their African sisters. Again, in that crude salon, my heart filled to overflowing with a strong love for these radiant beings and an even stronger desire to teach women worldwide that the most important things in life are not things. Although I've spent many years being formally educated, the powerful lessons I learned in the Kibera slums outshine my book learning on many levels. My next lesson was learned in the humble home of Mabel, with whom Adele has worked for many years. Because of her very difficult life, Mabel looks far older than her 55 years. Her home consists of 2 rooms, a living/bedroom area that was about 5 feet by 7 feet, and a very old, worn-out couch was there. and a sheet that divided the couch area from her little bed. The second room is an even smaller kitchen. It's the smallest kitchen I'd ever seen, with room only for one person to prepare a very simple meal. The wonderful lesson that I learned from Mabel is how any woman at any age living in any situation can be a successful entrepreneur. You see, she had created several bead necklaces and bracelets for me to purchase during my visit. The jewelry was carefully displayed on a box covered with a clean linen cloth that served as a table in front of the tiny couch. The jewelry I purchased from Mabel that day was raffled at one of my conferences in Los Angeles, and the money was given to Adele, who attended that conference in LA, to help her with her work in the slums. Another revelation was that throughout the day I never saw anyone wearing soiled clothes. That amazed me. Weaving in between the dwellings were countless clotheslines filled with newly washed clothes. I admired their pride. Although there are dirt floors, dirt roads, dirt everywhere, all of the many children we saw were very clean. They had clean hair, clean faces, clean clothes, and they seemed genuinely happy. These children were playing and laughing and dancing and enjoying themselves, oblivious to their surroundings. That's all they knew. That's all they know now. And they're happy. Groups of little boys, they played with very old balls, and other children were taking turns solo dancing, performing for each other. When they saw us, they all asked the same question. With delightful smiles and heavy accents, they said, "How are you?" They all said that. "How are you?" I suspect they have no idea what that phrase means. I was charmed by the children. They're impressive testimonials to the truth that just as flowers can thrive in the desert when given enough water, children can thrive anywhere when given enough love. And the mothers I saw in the slums, many were teenagers, they showed loving kindness to their children. These women taught by example, which is the best way to teach children anywhere. Soon after talking with more women and meeting more children, the heavens opened and pouring rain drenched us before we took cover in one of the small homes. Huddled in their hovel, their very tiny, dark home, I was shocked again. I had no idea what it sounds like when you're inside a corrugated tin hut with no insulation to minimize the sound. We couldn't even hear each other, even yelling, because the rain pounded on the roof with such deafening, relentless sound for about 20 minutes. And I thought about the 120-degree African heat that would happen that year. How in the world did they live through the summers in these crude huts with tin? How did they keep their babies healthy? And just then I heard a toddler crying in the attached dwelling next door. It sounded like the baby was right next to us, and I realized then they could hear everything that their neighbors said and did. Everything. And when the storm changed from a torrential downpour to manageable rain, we began our climb out of the slums. Adele and I linked arms and hurried, sloshing up the hill under her umbrella and talking about the day. As we again passed the old white church high on the hill, a different and larger crowd of women had gathered. This time they danced as they sang their gospel tunes. We stopped for a moment and we stared because we were witnessing a magnificent scene. The beautiful women were dancing and praising God, and at that very moment in time, their bodies were perfectly outlined. They were silhouetted against a cloudy orange-blue sky. They had no idea what we were seeing below them. It looked exactly like a huge movie set with dancing black singers playing their roles perfectly against a breathtaking backdrop of color. Tears stung my eyes as I watched in awe. My sweet African sweet sisters were singing and dancing in the rain.